to AboutFACE Theatre presents 5 Questions With, and today's guest, playwright Lee Blessing. Lee is the author of over 40 plays, including A Walk in the Woods, 2 Rooms, Eleemosynary, and Going to St. Ives. His plays have been performed on Broadway, in the West End, throughout the US, including at theatres such as Signature, the Guthrie and the Humana Festival, and worldwide. His many accolades include Drama Desk, Outer Critics Circle and Steinberg Awards, nominations for Tony and Olivier Awards, and being a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. He's Professor Emeritus at Rutgers University, where for over a dozen years, he headed the Graduate Playwriting Program. Lee, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Lee, we're just going to dive right in. So the first question is, what play or experience first got you into theater?
Well, I had to go back as I thought about that question, and really, it goes back to when I was 14 years old. I grew up in Minneapolis, in the middle of the country, in the 50s and early 60s, and at that time in Minneapolis, St. Paul, there were a couple of community theaters. There was university theater. There was high school theater. And then there were the touring houses downtown in each city that would take, touring Broadway shows. That was it. There was no other theater, no other thought of theater, pretty much at that time. And that's when the Tyrone Guthrie Theater was established in Minneapolis. Guthrie chose, that city to put the theater in. So really, the first time I went to the Guthrie Theater was the experience, I think, even though I'd seen plays in my schools and things like that. It was the first time I walked into a theater and was absolutely transported, I think, into the world of theater, and developed an instant ambition to be involved in all that. It was an extraordinary building, one of the best venues to see a play that I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it's been torn down now, and the Guthrie's across town in a different venue. But that's just the way things go. But the memory will always be very much alive.
Absolutely. And what was the step then that took you into working in the theater professionally? When I was in undergraduate school, I was an English major, a poet. I acted a bit. Ultimately, I went to the writer's workshop at the University of Iowa, where I wrote poetry, but then I also got involved with the Graduate Playwriting Program. And at that time, 1974, I literally could walk across the river to the theater building, tell the professor there who was in charge of the graduate playwriting that I had a play he could read. I'd love to be part of the program. And he read the play and said, okay. So it's a little different now for people who are applying to graduate programs. But, I spent 5 years at the University of Iowa getting MFAs in poetry and in playwriting. I got there, I think, as somebody who thought of himself as a poet who acted. And I left thinking of myself primarily as a playwright. And I've written plays ever since. So, and that's really where I learned how to write plays. I worked with a fellow named Oscar Brownstein. And he was the first person who could explain to me how and why a play is organized the way it is. And it is literally, in my whole life, been the only thing I could organize. I've never been able to organize anything else. So I've stuck with my lone talent pretty much throughout the years. Nice. Well, the rest of us are glad. Okay, yes. Lee. So, second question then is, what's a great play that you love, and why? I think the most delicious moment I ever had, the most truly inspiring moment I ever had, happened in an unusual way. I was in Minneapolis after grad school. We are working a lot at a place called the Playwright Center, which is one of 2 really preeminent places, support organizations for playwrights who are learning their craft. The other one being New Dramatists in New York. But I was there. There were about 50 by this time playwrights in town in the late 70s, early 80s.
And I knew a few of them. Some others simply worked there and I didn't really know them. And one of those people was August Wilson. August was living in St. Paul and working, just kind of day jobs and writing his plays. I didn't happen to see his readings. He had a couple at the Playwright Center. Then he hit with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is a play I didn't know, coming out of the O'Neill National Playwrights Conference in 1983, I guess it was. I got into the O'Neill the next year, and so the day I got there, August was also there with another play, Fences, that you may have heard of. But I got there, and I had known August to say hello to, but other than that, I didn't really know him or his work. I happened to walk into an old building they called the Mansion there on the grounds, and I walked into the living room, and I saw a copy of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom from the year before that was just sitting on a table. So I sat down and spent the next hour or two reading the play. And it was a transformative experience in the sense that it made me know who August was, what he was doing. It was the chance to read a masterpiece of a play. And it also explained to me why I was at the O'Neill in a way, and what was, in a sense, what was possible there and in terms of theater itself. So that was an inspiring play, but I got to read it in a very inspiring way too. So yeah, for me, that's the thing I think of.
Yeah. Ooh, lovely, lovely. I love it being so close to like its origins too.
Right. I was also privileged to watch the original 4-hour version of Fences a couple of weeks later. In a staged reading, and August luckily cut that down just a little. So that was good. Started at 8 p.m. and ended at 1 in the morning. So outside where the animals were.
Oh wow!
So that was a great time.
Yeah. So, can you tell us about a time in your theater life where something turned out or didn't turn out the way that you thought it would, turned out differently than you thought it would?
Every time. Pretty much that's been true. The most startling one, I think, every serious playwright in America dreams, I suppose, of being on Broadway, but we're pretty realistic about the fact that very few plays American plays especially, get to Broadway. And so when it happens, it's always an exception and an unusual and an anomaly, really. And I had a play like that called The Walk in the Woods in 1988. And interestingly, it was primarily produced by an independent producer, and she chose as her the general manager of the production Manny Eisenberg, who had made his whole career producing Neil Simon on Broadway. So, and there were a couple of other partners. Yale was involved, and PBS was involved. It was an odd group of people. But the show opened on a Friday, and it got every review in New York. It got glowing reviews, except for the New York Times, which was simply tepid. It wasn't horrible. It just wasn't enthused. And on Monday morning, as is typical in Broadway, you'll have a meeting of the partners to see how the opening went and what it makes them feel like doing. And Manny got there. I was not there. I'm only the playwright. Why would I be? But Manny got there, and his first sentence out of his mouth was he thought we should post the show. In other words, close the show within a week. Wow. Because he didn't see it making money, and he was used to Neil Simon and making money.
Right.
It's a very, very powerful theme in American theater too. If it's not commercial, we don't know why we're doing it. And so that was a surprise. Luckily, somebody was willing to throw in a few more dollars for advertising. The show ran about 6 months, I think, did not make money. But again, it was a critical hit, except for the only paper that counts in America. And the play has lived on. It's still produced today. It's becoming an international play. I have a picture of somebody sent me from Mumbai where they were doing the play, but for an Indian and a Pakistani, which I thought that's kind of wonderful. So anyway, the play has had a life, despite all of that. But it did remind me what American theater is really all about, and how much of a fight it is for serious playwrights in this country.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, okay. Well, speaking about being a serious playwright, you've talked about how you've been a playwright for this whole long, fantastic career. But what is it that keeps you coming back to theater and to writing for theater? What moves you? What excites you about theater?
Well, I'd have to say I have to go back to my earlier answer for this. I literally am incapable of organizing anything but writing a play. So I can do other things, but they're never satisfying because I'm really not very good at them. So the thing that keeps me coming back to plays and theater is the pure pleasure I get writing a play. And when I say that, it's not always a pleasurable feeling. I was answering a question, I think, for the Playwrights Center in Minneapolis. They had sent out a questionnaire, and it was about what do you do when you find yourself stuck in a project. And I said, I torture myself until I work it out. It's the one thing theater does ask of us. And in writing my most recent play, it was really a torturous process. Probably having a lot of really playwriting. Ultimately, I do it because when I'm done, and if it's successful, I really enjoy it. I have a tremendous sense of accomplishment, just personally. So I think that's what brings me back. Theater, in a way, in this country, and maybe in other countries as well, is doing its best to push me away because I'm in, I tag very bad demographic boxes, apparently. I tick them. And it's not the theater is so wonderful and inviting and paradisical for me, the world of theater right now. It's that I write plays sort of despite the situation of these times, because it's what I love to do. It's been a lifelong passion.
Fantastic.
So, Lee, you talked a little bit about organizing being a skill in theater that has not transcended to other areas.
Apparently not.
So I'm wondering if there are any.
Do not ask me to plan a 2-car funeral.
So I'm wondering if there are any tools from theater that you have found useful in the rest of the non-theater life.
Patience, more than anything else. Patience. As you get older, you suddenly realize that patience is actually a tool that can get you through all sorts of things that you would otherwise just go crazy over, and act out and misbehave or just do yourself damage in one way or another. Having patience and realizing the world has no ambition to be perfect, quite the opposite. In the world of theater within it, I think is highly instructive for a writer, and I think it's the one tool that won't desert you if you bother to use it and cultivate it. Unfortunately, I am thrown back upon patience over and over in all sorts of situations. Plus, when something works in those unusual situations where you finished a play and you find somewhere to produce it, or you find, this is the ultimate example of patience in theater. Unfortunately, I wrote a play called A Body of Water in the early 2000s. It was a play that won awards. And opened at the Guthrie, as a matter of fact. Then was done the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, and then was done off Broadway. Did very well. As I say, I won awards, got published. But the problem was it was a play in 5 scenes, and I always hated the last scene. I never felt the play totally worked or totally culminated. But I couldn't figure out how to change it. I changed it every time. Every production had a different last scene. The published version was different from every production of the play. I rewrote the last scene 15 times. And finally, I threw my hands up. It was a published play. It was, an official successful play. So just leave it, And then 10 years later, I had a weird opportunity to go to a new play festival with a play, but the actors that they were using wanted to do A Body of Water. And I said, well, it's not a new play. And they said, yeah, we know. And the person running it said, maybe you could just do some revisions in it. And I said, well, I've always wanted to rewrite the last scene, and I could do that again for the 16th time. I said, why not do that? And they said, okay, that's good enough for us. Let's do it. And I said, all right. So I sat down, 10 years removed, and took about a half an hour and solved the play. I did a revision of probably only 4 or 5 pages, and that completely made the play work on its own terms for the first time. It had always been sort of between two stools, and so that made me feel awfully good to perfect the play, long after there was any commercial hope for it. But we had a good time, and everybody who's read it loves the new draft. They say, yes, now this play completely connects for me. So that, is a great example of patience.
Yeah.
It helps me aesthetically. It makes me feel good about something. I even went to the publisher, Dramas Play Service, and said, I want you to publish this new version. They said, you have to pay us to destroy all the copies that we have of the current version. This is what they normally do. And I said, well, it's a few $100. Yeah, let's do it. So I spent a few $100s to make that go away. And I should have made them send me the confetti. That would have been nice.
Yeah.
But now you can only buy the new version. It's the only one available in the world. So patience was, even that I consider virtue rewarded, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Okay. Well, Lee, this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bonus question, can we ask you anything about what you're working on at the moment?
Oh, the COVID year started out very miserably for everyone, of course, and tragically for many people. But I did eventually write a play during the COVID year. That was the torturous experience I'm thinking about, actually. But it is a play called The Family Line, and I was really kind of shocked because I ended up writing, I think, one of the best plays I've written. I showed it to, we did a Zoom conference of it at the Playwright Center in May, and that went extremely well. And then we did it at this little festival in Durango, Colorado, in a 3-sided tent with about 80 people watching, and that went extremely well. Everyone I have showed this to has asked to produce it. And that's probably because it's a play very much of the period of the COVID and BLM period. It speaks precisely to those things, and it's also because it's a 2-person play. It's extraordinarily simple to produce. I don't know when and where it'll get produced. I have an agent in New York who's put it in front of a couple of places, but theaters are, not all theaters are back by any means. And some of the ones that are feel like they need to be doing things they were about to do back then, and so there's this line. So who knows where it'll get produced, but I'm very, very happy with it, I have to say.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for joining us. So it's been such a joy.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure and privilege to talk with you guys.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to you, the audience, for joining us. If you enjoyed the interview, please like below, follow AboutFACE, and share, because we believe theater makes life better. See you next time on AboutFACE Theater presents 5 Questions With.
If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and share. Thanks for watching.